Hello, dear listener. I hope you are doing great. I'm doing great. I'm here to introduce the next video, as I tend to do. This would be episode 21, and this one is 6 Strange Encounters from Reddit. I believe this is actually my first video to include any sort of UFO-style encounters, which is interesting that it took me 21 videos, 22 if we count the White Feathers one, to actually get to the point where there was a UFO story involved. They're not as common as they used to be, apparently. So, I don't know. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this. I know I'm going to enjoy narrating it because there's some good stuff. There's always good stuff, right? It is always good stuff. That is the thing. These users on Reddit share some fantastic stories, share some fantastic experiences. I guess I shouldn't really say stories. They are stories, but they're not made-up stories. They're true stories that happened to these people, so, Yeah, so again, this is 6 Strange Encounters from Reddit. Enjoy. So I lived in South Denver about 6, maybe 7 years ago, and I went outside to smoke, and I thought I saw a mylar balloon glistening in the sun, like miles up in the air. I focused on it, and it turned out to be more than one. The more I focused, the more there seemed to be. And they didn't really look like balloons. So I ran in the house and grabbed some nice hunting binoculars, and I focused on them. There were dozens of triangular, shiny, metal-colored objects in a cluster. I kept thinking they must be balloons, maybe from a wedding, but they weren't really moving, just hanging in the air, and there seemed to be more and more of them the harder I looked. After a while, there seemed like there were hundreds, so I yelled for the guy that I lived with. He came out and he saw them too. He looked at the binoculars and tried to film them on a camcorder, but he couldn't get it to focus on them, and the film just looked like the blue sky. He couldn't figure out what they were either, and here they were, probably 30 minutes later, still hanging in the same place in the sky, so he called for his dad. And he came, and looked through the binoculars and saw them too. He tried to film them on his phone, but again, they were too far away to focus on. So we all just sat there for another hour just staring at this crowd of multiplying objects high in the sky. They seemed to get further away, but they never really disappeared. We eventually went inside. I never did rationalize what the objects we saw were. It was almost like we couldn't see how many of them there were until we started focusing on trying to see them. It was really crazy, and I still wish I could have figured out what they were. The story I'm about to share with you actually happened to my ex-husband's uncle. It was in the early 70s, and my ex-husband's uncle, we'll call him Bob, had just come back from Vietnam. One night, he was hanging out with some friends near the woods in Louisiana. It was getting late, and Bob needed to get home. He began to stumble home. He was drunk at this point, and by the time it was really late, so he was the only one on the path that led to his trailer. As he was walking, he began to hear someone whistling up ahead. Puzzled at first, he continued to walk until he saw a man whistling, walking toward him. When he got closer to the man, he realized it was a friend who served with him back in Vietnam. Bob shouted out to him, wondering why he was in Louisiana, because the last time he saw him, he was still in Vietnam. Anyway, they chatted with each other for several hours until both of them had to go, and the friend told him to take care of himself. I don't remember how he found out, but eventually he got the news that that friend had passed away around the same time he was talking to him. And then, just to round this out, Bob passed away around 2008. After reading all the anecdotes here, I wanted to write down my own experience that still freaks me out just thinking about it. Just down the road from where I used to live, in Southeast Australia, is the opening to about a 100-acre of woodland and bush that I frequently went into when I was younger to do the usual things, riding and camping. I was out driving around 11:30 p.m. with my girlfriend, and as we were in the area, decided to show her the woodlands while we were there, as she loves everything to do with nature, and it was summer, so it was an extremely warm night. I left my car with the light shining into the trees as we weren't going too far in, and it was pitch black outside. And the two of us just kind of sat chatting, having a smoke, and then generally relaxing. She was sitting on a sort of map of the area that had been put in on some plastic, and was keeping an eye on the trees, as I had a feeling that something was off. I've read on here a few people have said that they felt that they were in danger, although nothing around them was off, and it was this same feeling. Every sense was almost reaching out, and my adrenaline was up, but there wasn't really anything in my eyeline that seemed to be different. After lighting another cigarette to calm my nerves, I scanned the tree line again and realized that it looked different to before. It was only after staring into the dark that I saw that there was moonlight now lighting up grass where it couldn't before, because there was a black shape blocking it before that I thought was a tree. I get goosebumps just typing this, but the only way to describe it was that all sound just ceased and everything went dead silent. Then a few seconds later, this disgusting feeling of dread fell over me, and I saw motion in the dark of the path as this thing crawled toward us on all fours. I've seen nearly every animal in the outback here, and we don't have any large predators like the US or Europe, but somehow I knew this thing was a predator. And it wasn't hiding itself from us, but just slowly crawling forward toward us. I don't know if my girlfriend saw it or not, as I couldn't look away, but just as it reached the line of my car lights, it reared up on 2 legs and was just staring at us. Now I'm 6'4", and this thing was about another meter larger than me, with arms that were far too long that reached down near the ground, and all I could make out was an off-white, almost yellowish fur on it. And in the dim light, I could make out the silhouette of its head. It looked like a dog or a wolf. I wasn't able to move as it stared at me, but it was at this point that my girlfriend gasped, which seemed to break me of whatever was stopping me from thinking logically. I grabbed her by the arm and sprinted toward my car, slammed the doors, and tore out of there as fast as I possibly could, both of us too scared to speak until about half an hour later. We've both discussed it many times, and the feeling that we had was what I imagine a rabbit sees when it catches a wolf or fox staring at it, that this is something that would be able to end us with absolute ease if it so chose. Neither of us have been able to come up with any explanation for what it was, but it has definitely changed the way I view the woods and bush, and when I go camping or hiking now. I think back to that, and I wonder what it was, and if I will ever see anything like it again. So, technically at 2:30 or 3 a.m. this morning, the 18th of December 2019, my mother woke me up to come see something. I was startled by her urgency, and I followed her to a window in our home. Outside, there was a foreign light floating in the sky. We see planes and towers from our home, and this was neither one of those. Upon further inspection, the light was blinking, mostly a white light, but it also had greens and reds. The light was also moving side to side. At first only slightly, and then more and more as we watched. I live in Will County, Illinois. I'm hoping that maybe someone else has seen UFOs last night, earlier this morning, because it was my first real experience with seeing a true UFO, and from what I've heard or read online, other UFO sightings, this is how they act. We even Googled it to see if we were seeing a satellite or something, and we weren't supposed to be able to see either at that time last night. One article claimed it was a planet, but in my experience, planets don't move side to side like that. It is now 3 p.m., 18th of December 2019, and we can see the UFO in the sky again. We see it, then a plane flies close to it and it becomes faint and then disappears. My mom is convinced that it's probably just a satellite, but I think it's a spacecraft. I'll start by saying that I don't personally believe the experiences I'm about to describe have any explanation beyond childhood brain development and stress, but for those of you who do believe, here are 2 unrelated experiences. Between the ages of 5 and 6, me and my twin brother used to have the exact same dream on occasion. Growing up, we would try to explain it away as having similar experiences or having discussed the dream with each other, but who knows. Around the same age, we would frequently experience auditory hallucinations of our mother or father calling for us. This seems to be pretty common among young children, just reading through the sub, but is the explanation child brain development, or that something has a reason to talk to young children? Perhaps something that only young children will actually listen to. Much later, around the age of 19 and 20, I had this girlfriend. Nothing weird until we started living together for about a year. She was a sleep talker, and would sometimes sleep with her eyes open, so that was kind of creepy sometimes, especially since some of the stuff she'd be muttering about death and other morbid things. She would sometimes have conversations with someone in her sleep, which wouldn't have been creepy if they were like conversations with her mom or her dad, but no, it was almost always something that you could tell involved the other party threatening her or someone trying to kill themselves and her trying to dissuade them. Sometimes she would talk to me in her sleep, and on a few times, I got the chills because it was as if I was talking to someone else. She would also half wake up and point out hallucinations on the walls or ceilings, and would sometimes see things and have very vivid hallucinations even when awake. It was a fun time. She was very much an I want to believe kind of person, and at this time was going through some mental illness stemming from an abusive childhood. So I'd always take it with a grain of salt, but there were a few unnerving coincidences here. This person came from a culture where astrology was very important, and at birth, an astrologist reading indicated that she would be susceptible as a vessel for spirits and such. Her friends did tell me a story about how they stayed at a hotel in LA that was supposed to be haunted due to an unusually high rate of deaths among its guests. There might have been a serial killer too, I don't remember. Anyway, in the middle of the night, she sat up, pointed at a spot in the middle of the room, and yelled, "Demon!" In my experience, that part was just a normal night. What made this a bit creepy was that everyone had nightmares at night, and had little scratches that they really couldn't explain. Later on, I think that she had started to get to me a little bit. The relationship had started to break down, and I had a lot of stress from work and school. But when she said that she could hear whispers, sometimes I could hear them too, or see the figure that she would point out in the dark. I started to have auditory hallucinations, like those in my childhood too, but it would be her voice. I've read about similar stuff happening to couples with deteriorating relationships. They have the other person on their mind a lot, and sometimes they hear their name, especially their pet name, called from other rooms. But I've also read myths about different cultures about mimics, bogeymen, and the like that are drawn to vulnerable people and negative situations, so who knows. And while I was writing this, I swear I heard my flatmate and his girlfriend in the room next door, but they aren't here. This place's walls are pretty thin, so it could have been the neighbors, but still. I'm gonna leave this empty apartment and find some other humans to be around. Now, this next story, isn't really like a paranormal style experience, but it was a neat anecdotal story that the user wrote, so I wanted to include it into this, in this story, because despite the fact that people go through a lot of things in their lives, and a lot of people may feel like they are genuinely unlucky, there is always that possibility that maybe something about life doesn't let them move out of that period or that segment of their life where bad luck occurs. I don't really believe that life is planned out from the beginning. You have your entire life ahead of you to decide things, but I understand that sometimes it can feel like you actually are cursed or stuck and being forced to be stuck by something that is beyond your control. That said, here's the story, here's the post. Do you believe some people could be cursed? By Mista Window. An example I'll use to illustrate my point may seem petty, but it's actually a microcosm of the way I feel my entire life has been. You're tagged in a photo on social media. Doesn't matter the person, doesn't matter the time, the place, etc. That photo with you in it will get less likes than any other photo they've ever posted. My buddy mentioned this to me. He said, "Man, my mom was saying that she feels like she gives off bad energy. That anytime she's involved with something, people will seem less interested." And then he brought up the Instagram example. That is me times 100, and he feels this way about himself as well. Things just don't work out. They never do. Someone tells you, "I've had bad luck with my last relationship. You've never even had a girlfriend. I'm not happy with my career, it doesn't pay well. You don't even have a career." Now, before I'm told this is just poor social skills or laziness, lack of desire to achieve things stated above, it's not that. I have no hope in life because I always remember wanting to get ahead and things just didn't click. Ever. Things just never really worked out. I actually feel as though I am cursed. One last thing to sum it up, because it's so hard to explain. It's like an undertone of life that's so subtle but affects everything. So again, imagine a viral video you saw that got millions upon millions of views, and then you had some way to go back in time, upload the same video with the same tags, the same title at the exact same time, and no one would ever see it. It would get 2 views and never be seen again. That's how I feel. There's just a vibe of bad luck, you're not meant to be successful type of feeling. I'm just not meant to be anything, and it feels as though a force is holding me back, as though I am legitimately cursed. Now, to this user, I do want to say, I hope things get better for you. Just remember they always do. I know you've probably heard that a billion times, but take this from somebody who's, without getting too personal, just take this from someone who's gone through a lot, okay? Things may feel like they'll never get better, and who knows, maybe there is a long woven thread of life that has to be cut and retwisted and, rebraided into certain parts, and maybe that's out of your control. Just kind of, my best advice in this case is just kind of accept life for what it is at any given time. Make the most of what you have, even if it doesn't feel like you can make anything out of it. I promise you can. I'm kind of here narrating people's stories from Reddit, so, it is what it is in the end. And that concludes the 6 strange encounters from Reddit. I hope this video was satisfactory. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, hey, please consider clicking that little thumb. It's kind of like a hand with its thumb pointing upward. It looks like a hand. I think it's a hand. We're going to pretend it's a hand. Click the little hand with its thumb going upward if you enjoyed it. Also, there's a little button that says subscribe. And this is magic. I promise you, this is absolute magic. If that button is red and says subscribe, if you click on that button, it will change to the word subscribed. and it will turn gray. That is insane to me. It's pure magic. So click it. You will not be dissatisfied with clicking it. And then the other thing you can do is there's a box underneath the video where you can type words, and those words can be seen by billions upon billions of people that exist on this planet. Yeah, think of that insanity. I'm done with that. That was horrible. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did enjoy, like, subscribe, leave a comment, please. Also share the video. All stories are sourced in the video description below. Also, my social media handles are down there. Reddit, Facebook, Twitter, etc. Actually, those are the only 3, so there's no etc. So find me on all the social media sites. Stalk me as much as you can, or choose to do. I don't know. It's up to you. But that all said, until next time, guys, I hope every single one of you sleep well.